Did you know that a whopping 95,000 Americans die from alcohol every single year? It's absolutely tragic, and alcohol is actually the third leading preventable cause of death in the US today. Today in this video, you're going to be finding out what the other two top causes are and the dozens of different ways in which alcohol cuts your life short. And if you actually stick around to the very end of the video, I'm going to tell you the one single health benefit of alcohol consumption, according to the CDC, saves the lives of 57 Americans every single year. And just before we get into the video, I want to say one thing. I'm not trying to scare you with this video. The data is scary, but my intention is just to give you the truth. There's too much glamorization, there's too much positivity surrounding a destructive drug that kills so many people. So whilst this video might make you uncomfortable, I urge you to watch the whole thing. Some of the stuff that I'll be talking to you about may spur you into action. And just before we actually get into the video, if you want my personal help stopping drinking in the Sober Clear program, where we really reframe the way that you view alcohol and then focus on the future with a coaching and a community and all this different stuff, click the link in the description and you can book a call with me and we can see if this Sober Clear program could be a good match for you. I typically work with business owners and professionals just because my program is a logical approach. So if you want to book a call and see if that's a good match, click the link in the description. Now back to the video. I remember when I was going to school, we were constantly told, and I mean probably absolutely bombarded, about the dangers of illegal drugs. I remember watching like a documentary when I was like 14 about the dangers of heroin, and so we should. But when you actually look at the hard data and compare the deaths from illegal drugs like heroin, they pale in comparison to alcohol, and you hardly hear anything about them. But that's all going to change today. So let's get into it. What we're going to do is we're going to dive into the official Centers for Disease Control statistics, which I've also linked to you below. Now, the big picture is this. Alcohol kills 95,000 Americans every single year. On average, each of these 95,000 people die 29 years before their time. You multiply 95,000 people by 29 years and you arrive at a figure of 2.755 million lost years of life every single year. Overall, around 3.4 million Americans die from all causes every year, meaning that alcohol claims the life of 1 out of every 36 people, which is pretty shocking. The National Institutes of Health classes alcohol as the third leading preventable cause of death, trailing only tobacco and physical inactivity or a poor diet. Tobacco claims about 435,000 lives a year, and physical inactivity along with a poor diet another 400,000. So let's see how this total of 95,000 alcohol-related deaths breaks down. Now, the large majority of victims are male, 68,000 compared to 27,000 females. Across both sexes, chronic causes of death are slightly more important than acute, roughly 53% compared to 47%. So first, we're going to take a look at the chronic causes of death. To keep it simple, I'm not going to give separate statistics per sex. If you want that information, you can check out the links below. That breaks it down a little bit more granularly. Now, the CDC splits the 51,000 annual deaths from chronic causes into the following 5 categories. First and foremost is what the CDC classes as, quote, 100% alcohol attributable. This is exactly what it says on the tin. Deaths which have no other causes except for drinking. This then breaks up into several subcategories, of which by far the most important is liver disease, accounting for 18,000 deaths. This is followed by 2 slightly more vague categories, alcohol-dependent syndrome and alcohol abuse, at 4.2 and 2.6 thousand deaths respectively. The CDC doesn't give us more details into these categories, but I think it's safe to say that it refers to what we'd call chronic alcoholism, where the entire body basically gives out from all the years of abuse. None of the other subcategories in this group account for over 1,000 annual deaths. Now, the second major category of chronic deaths is cancer, with a total of slightly over 5,000 deaths. According to the CDC, alcohol is not 100% responsible for these deaths, but it contributes to them in people with a predisposition. Again, we see the liver is by far the most affected organ. This is followed by colorectal cancer and cancers of the mouth and the pharynx. The third major chronic category is heart diseases and stroke. Remember all the news stories about how red wine is good for your heart and all of that? Well, I have some hard news for you. It's not. Around 3,500 deaths from heart disease are linked to alcohol, and an equal number of deaths are linked to hypertension. Alcohol-related strokes kill over 1,000 people a year as well. The fourth category is the liver. gallbladder, and pancreas disease, accounting for a combined 10,000 deaths. Last but not least is a residual category made of other chronic causes, which accounts for 315 deaths altogether. Now, moving on to the acute causes of death, we have 5 major categories. First, alcohol-related poisonings. What's interesting is that of the 14,000 deaths in this category, only slightly over 2,000 correspond to poisoning from the alcohol itself. You see, even though alcohol is a highly toxic substance, a truly lethal dose is massive. Depending on your level of tolerance, you'd need to drink about 4 bottles of wine in one sitting to die. It's very difficult to get to that point without passing out first. Hence, the relatively low number of alcohol poisonings. The second leading cause of acute deaths are suicides, with roughly 10,000 deaths a year. Independent researchers estimate that 30 to 40% of suicides involve some degree of alcohol intoxication. This is followed by motor vehicle crashes, with 7,000 annual deaths. Last but not least, we have a residual category of other acute causes. This is quite the mixed bag. The most common cause of death here is homicide, with 7,000 annual deaths. When you consider that the total annual number of homicides is 24,000, you see that alcohol is involved in almost 30% of these cases. This is followed by fall injuries with 2,000 annual deaths, and then by fire injuries at about 1,000 deaths a year. All the remaining categories account for a few hundred deaths each. For example, you have hypothermia at roughly 300 deaths a year. This is mostly drunk people falling asleep out in the cold and then never waking up. Occupation and machine injuries account for slightly over 100 deaths, as do accidental firearm injuries. So what about the health benefit that I spoke about at the beginning of the video? Now, the section of the CDC website that we're pulling this data from tabulates the total excess deaths from alcohol in the general population of the United States. In other words, how many extra people die in the US each year who would still be alive but for alcohol. And in all fairness, the CDC actually gives us their best estimate for the number of people who are alive today because of alcohol. In other words, the CDC believes that alcohol has a certain health benefit, and according to its own data, 57 deaths are prevented each year due to this benefit. And I'll give you a little hint. It's not a heart-related benefit. The CDC does not believe that alcohol protects anybody from heart disease. So, can you take a guess? Guys, according to the CDC, alcohol consumption saves the lives of 57 people a year who would otherwise die from gallbladder disease. Now, this is just an estimate, but the theory is that moderate alcohol consumption can reduce the risk of gallstones and in some cases prevent the progression of gallbladder disease. But that's around 1 in 5 million people that may benefit. But it's not like the CDC have done a clinical trial showing this to be true. It is just an estimate. Let me know what you make of this in the comment section. I stand by it that there are no benefits to drinking ethanol whatsoever. So let me know what you think and have a great day.